town feeling, the closeness, the connectedness, the proximity, the availability to services, and to be able to have, whether it's grocery stores or lifestyle centers or theaters or a dollar store, well, not a dollar store, a Platt Pantry, 7-Eleven close by on the corner. And so that talks about the things that people like, but everything that I talked about before was the growth and the expansion and the things that would sometimes play against that. So the issue, of course, is to recognize those impacts, and secondly, be able to manage that tension between maintaining viability, economic viability, and the issues of congestion and other impacts associated with that. So as a council, as a community, we look at the types of things that we can do to provide enhancement in our community. So and this screen is coming. Reverse frontages. I talked about the Boones Ferry Road because our council recognized that it isn't always just enough to put a road in and have some capacity, but then have what we call reverse frontages, where the backyard of someone's other side of the fence is your front yard when you're driving up and down the road, so to speak. So we undertook a program to increase some fees, but we're talking like $1.50 a month, and we use those fees to improve the reverse frontages across the community. We have a plan for doing that and for maintaining that, and also for developing what we are calling gateways. We've got a gateway plan in place at between exit 289 and 290 that will give that same spirit of intent to I-5 as you're coming into and leaving Tualatin. To have it more than just a freeway with some blackberry briars growing on each side of the freeway. So I'll skip on by that in the interest of time. And so, maybe I won't. I like that slide. I mentioned the bridge, and I just refer to that again for a couple reasons. One is it was a great project, and secondly, to repeat myself, it really was a partnership between the City of Tualatin, the City of Tigard, Clean Water Services, the feds, the State of Oregon, and a project that, don't quote me, but I'm thinking costs approaching $3.5 million. We could never build something like that. I think the City of Tualatin was into it for something under $500,000 when it was all said. The library, you sort of have to be sleeping under a rock not to see the library that's being built in town, but that's the artist rendering, and if you drive by it, you see that's the scape of that front curved area. It will be a magnificent building. It will be a magnificent building, but it won't be an icon kind of building where you say, gosh, why is the government spending that kind of money on that building when I don't live in a house that nice? That's not the case. It would be a beautiful building. It would be a functional building. It would be a kind of building that not only will house collections, but will attract people to come in, I think, and have some community spirit over a cup of espresso. Interesting, though, talk about the library and how the people in Tualatin feel about their library. So we are not building a new library. We are re-expanding and renovating the old library, which pretty much went down below the subfloor. And we had to find a place to operate a library for a year. So we moved into a building here over by Clark's Lumber, and anyone in retail knows that location, and I mean, you can't find this. You can't. I believe for over 30 years it's hard to find. But what happened to the business unit at the Tualatin Library when we made that move? How many of you would like to basically shut your business down for a year while you build a new facility, or go hide your business in someplace for a year while you build a new facility? The Tualatin Library circulations, things going in and coming out, has increased since we've moved into the temporary building. That might be a reason to stay, but what it really says is that people value that resource, and they're still getting there by foot and online. We did another groundbreaking just recently, actually, and that's for the Commuter Rail station in front of the Hagens, and you've seen, obviously, that going on, that conversation going on for years. You saw the tracks being built over the last couple of years. Now you're actually seeing dirt being turned. And I believe that will be up and operational by fall of 2008. You've got a great handout there at your place that talks about the neat things you can do on West. I will brag on a City of Tualatin employee, Stacy, who actually named it. I guess a couple other people came up with that name as well. But it will be not just a transportation link for today, but I believe it will be a transportation change for the future, and will provide a stimulus for more development up and down the rail line all the way from Wilsonville to Beaverton. We are aware, by the way, that when you have trains coming through, particularly on heavy rail, there are issues with train whistles. There are issues to our residents. We're fully aware of that. We are working hard to understand that, to figure out what the mitigation opportunities are, what can be done, and it's something that we are addressing. The Heritage Center is a news story, but it's so fun I like to tell it every time I can. But I will just simply say, not only did they celebrate their 2nd anniversary, and by the way, you can still buy a brick for a paver for the patio to help fund that effort, but they had their 2nd anniversary. And you know, in business, if you have a good business plan and a great idea, the first year can be pretty good. The 2nd year is the one where you say, did I really make the right decision? The Heritage Center, not only did they make the right decision, but they have excelled, and almost every night that facility has something going on in it. It reaches out across various ages and interests. It isn't just a heritage center for the purpose of history, but it's a living facility, and just a ton of credit to the Historical Society and the folks that operate that facility. You know, the quarter century of our senior center it talks about a couple things. It talks about the fact that we have a population here in Tualatin, present company excluded, that is graying and is still vibrant and still, in fact, probably has more money than a lot of the other folks, and looking for ways to spend their time. And yet they like camaraderie, and they like living in this community. Some of them are brand new to the community, and some have been in this community since all the hair was dark. And as we focus on youth, and as we focus on you know, the middle incomes and the upper incomes and the parks and recs and all those things, we need to not only be aware that that's a strong part of our community, but we need to make sure that we're cognizant of how we meld the seniors and the teens and the boomers and all of us together in common places and sharing from each other's experiences. And so to that extent, I'll talk more about what might be in the offing for the senior center. Again, youth activities, we haven't had the facilities to do rock climbing and ice skating and things of that nature, but what we have done to a degree is have programs where we can take youth to those facilities. The city website, we continue to improve that to make it more friendly and navigable, but also to stock it up with the type of information that people are looking for. So what do we got here? Fences. Now, what's that all about? Interesting issues, but the cedar fences in Tualatin, the wood fences, many of which are 30 years, 20 years, even 15 years old. In many cases, you see decay from wood. You see areas where some of the neighborhoods maybe are getting a little bit older, or maybe not that old. It's just that some of the fences are coming down. And so the council, and with input from the neighborhoods and so on, thought about, there's a substantially larger investment to be made in a permanent type of fence, in a masonry fence. But from the standpoint of looking forward 10, 20 years, 30 years down the road to the beauty of this community, we make these investments, we do these things in rights of way and in other areas. What can we do to ensure an even higher quality of investment, sometimes in the residential area? So we went to this residential fence standards. We also adopted residential wall standards, and yes, every residence must have a wall. But some of those walls are somewhat monolithic, some of them, particularly if there's a row of them. And in many cases, and we've done this with the cooperation of the home builders, I would say with the support of the Home Builders Association, that by some changes in design with windows or bump outs or whatever, you can add more character to residences. And particularly as densities increase and the cost of land gets higher, the demand for do more on less area, we got to do that in a tasteful way, to the best of our ability. I mentioned the new water reservoir, I'd throw 108th Half Street improvement up there only because that's a street that we messed up on in terms of our ability to plan for that and finance it properly. And there was some reasons with that, Dolan and other things. But, we basically said that we still owe it to that neighborhood to make that street right. So we made improvements. We're going to be making more improvements to that street. I599 Connector, we've talked about that many times. There actually was progress this year. Several things were accomplished. We selected alternatives to be evaluated. And that might sound like a ho-hum, but in the midst of all of the possibilities and in some cases consternation, having done that, I think is a huge step forward. And we are required by the federal government, if we're going to look for federal funds, to do certain things. We have to compare a new facility to what if you don't build one. Well, it seems obvious, but you've got to document it. You've also got to compare it to what other things can you do to manage demand and manage traffic other than just adding concrete. You've got to look at the enhanced existing system. Are there other things that you can do in addition to or instead of a new facility before you actually start talking about a connector itself? So we have adopted those evaluation criteria. And I guess I just explained those options, so I won't repeat myself. Other than to say on the TSM, traffic supply or the traffic demand management and the traffic system management, all those things we're going to have to do with or without a connector, as well as the enhanced system. The area south of Tualatin, between Tualatin and Wilsonville, will require new road systems. It's not a panacea that a connector in and of itself is a solution. And exactly what form that connector takes, is it as we think of it as a typical freeway kind of design, or is it a boulevard, or is it even a more expansive network of existing streets to make connectivity so that we're not just creating pass-through, but we're actually serving the region, and do that in a way that improves the conditions for not just Tualatin, but for our neighbors, for Wilsonville, for Tigard, for Sherwood, and for folks trying to get through the region and come here and work, and people who live in this region who go elsewhere to work. And by the way, I want to just welcome Ray Phelps from the Wilsonville Chamber. Working together as chambers is a good model for governments, and we learn from that, and hopefully we try to also exemplify that. So, corridor analysis, corridor options, won't bore you with a lot of details. They probably look a little easier if you look at them one at a time. Basically, in addition to the enhanced system, in addition to demand management and system management, if there is a road built along a corridor, where might that be? Well, the southern terminus obviously will be somewhere between Tualatin and Wilsonville. And the issue here is when you connect to I-5, however that's done, it's got to work for these folks. It's got to enhance that intersection, which in a no-build scenario, when we do build all this industrial and commercial out, there's going to be transportation problems here anyway. We've got to be looking forward to solve those. It's got to be seamless to 205. So there are a lot of issues to consider. Quite honestly, it's a large, expensive solution. It's a solution that may be many, many years out, but it's a solution in whatever form it takes. If we don't figure out the alignment, if we don't start acquiring some right-of-way, if we don't do the land use associated with the termini on each end and how it connects to the development in between, it'll be another lost opportunity. Another option is for it to connect, instead of up at Sipole, down at Six Corners, and the third option on the west end is for it to connect south of Sherwood. So what's next in that? Well, do the analysis, evaluate the analysis. There will be public input in the summer. Hopefully by fall, the steering committee will choose an option or will decide which option based on the data is the best option. It's not necessarily a choice, and then amend the regional transportation plan. So you can't talk about quality of life without talking about first responders, without talking about community safety. Our Tualatin Police Department, obviously it's growing every year. We're proud of that organization. We're proud of some of the new leadership in that area, first of all with our chief, but also with the promotions of our captains and our sergeants, and just kind of the rethinking the way we do policing. And of course, you can tell that the police built this slide because they got every whistle and gadget on the animation coming in there, but they've got their goals, and their goals are to address issues that our neighborhoods talk about. Youth are still important to us, the DARE group, and sometimes some youth do things that we need to help them understand isn't the right thing to do. You may have noticed this little device around the streets, around schools and 12th and Sherwood Road intersections and so on. And I would urge you to understand that they're there to help improve the courtesy of drivers in terms of intersections and speed. Another first responder, and you know, the fire department doesn't work for the city of Tualatin, though I get a chance to get around the country a bit, and our Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue is well known, and I have people from other parts of the country come up and tell me how much they think we have a great fire department because of the Tualatin Fire Department. I say, yeah, that's right. But in all seriousness, it is a great fire department led by Chief Johnson, and